Teacher organization. Is it a myth? Today we're going to be talking all things organization, especially as you get ready for a brand new school year. But these tips are all about getting organized in a way that truly works for you. So whether you're feeling excited, overwhelmed, or a little bit of both, I want you to know you've got this. And I'm here to help you every step of the way. Hey, special educators. I'm Jennifer from Positively Learning. Welcome to the Special Educators Resource Room. If you're like me, you're always looking for ways to save time and streamline your work. That's why this podcast was created, to give you the systems and solutions you need to get your time back. Tune in for tips, tricks, and tools that will help you manage your workload and make the most of your time. Whether you're brand new or experienced, all are welcome in the Special Educators Resource Room. I'm not sure if you can relate, but I was always the type to get a brand new planner. I did this at the beginning of the calendar year and the beginning of the school year, and I think I was always hoping for finding the right planner that would make all the difference. And it would be beautiful, it would work for a week or two, and then it would just start gathering dust because real life came at me fast, and I was just reaching for a sticky note or whatever was closest. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with the planner. It can be set up perfectly. I've even created planners that I think would be just right for special educators. But it's the idea that that organization system was set up by someone else. So unless you are on the exact same wavelength, it might not work for you. You need to find your own system that's going to match your personal style, your needs, and your classroom environment. In this episode, I'm going to be throwing out some ideas that I think are flexible enough for you to pick and choose what's going to work for you. And we're going to be covering these three key areas: keeping up with paperwork like due dates for those all-important IEP meetings, making the most of the calendar system your school already has in place, and creating drop zones in your classroom so that your students can be part of staying organized. Let's go. So let's start talking about organization by focusing on you. Yes, you. So when it comes to getting organized, the first thing is to recognize there's no one size fits all. We all have different preferences. Some of us are visual learners who like to see everything laid out, while others might be list makers who thrive on checking things off one by one. And then there's those of us who love digital, setting reminders, getting everything organized on our phones or computers. The key here is to understand what works best for you. Take a moment to think about the past systems you've tried. What made you feel calm? What made you feel confident and in control? And what left you feeling more stressed? Your answers to these questions are going to guide you in setting up the system that's going to work for you this school year. I have to laugh when I think about answering these questions myself. There was one year that I got really into digital, and I set a reminder of everything I do, every step I would make during the day, the week, or the month. And I had these notifications going off all the time. If you looked at my phone, you had to scroll through because there were so many notifications, and it was incredibly stressful. And of course, I kept them up for months, never looking at them, just sort of bypassing them. But of course, they're there. And I think it kind of creeped into my subconscious and felt like added stress. I've also had these beautiful paper planners that I ended up not wanting to write in. Isn't that crazy? I actually would get mechanical pencils because I was so worried about writing in them and making a mistake, and it all looked awful, which of course has no impact on getting things done. I don't know why I was going there, but enough about my history. So you want to think about your style when you're choosing the right tool. And you want to choose a tool that's going to fit. So if you're a visual person, you might want a big wall calendar where you can color code events, or a bulletin board with sticky notes for each task. If lists are your thing, you might prefer a planner where you can just jot down daily to-dos and deadlines. And if you're all about tech, digital apps like Google Keep or maybe even Trello might be your best friend. Remember, it's okay to mix and match and try it out. You might find that a combination of a digital calendar for your meetings and a physical planner for all those daily tasks is just what you need. The most important thing is that your system feels natural and easy for you to use. Do not beat yourself up if you try something and it's a disaster. Just let it go. Move on to the next thing. Learn, reflect, move on. Don't think to yourself, I'll never be organized. No, you just haven't found the system that's going to work best for you. And you can probably tell I'm speaking from experience. All right, so now let's talk about paperwork. Everybody's favorite topic, right? But seriously, keeping up with the paperwork, especially for IEP meetings, is crucial. Those deadlines are non-negotiable, and missing one is going to cause a lot of stress. So how do you stay on top of it without feeling overwhelmed? Well, first, take a look at the big picture. What are the major due dates? You can backwards plan. Do you have IEP meetings scheduled? Progress reports due, or other important paperwork that needs to be handled? Write those dates down in a place where you can see them regularly. Here's a very simple system that might work for you. Create a due dates folder. This folder can be a physical one that you keep on your desk or a digital one that you keep on your computer desktop. This folder should be your go-to spot for any paperwork related to upcoming deadlines. So every week, set aside a few minutes to review what's coming up. This could be on a Friday afternoon as you wrap up the week, or on a Monday morning as you're planning out the week ahead. By checking in it regularly, you can make sure that nothing sneaks up on you. If you prefer the digital system, you could set a reminder on your phone or on your computer for key deadlines. This way, it's like a gentle nudge a few days before something is due, giving you plenty of time to prepare. The next key is something that I learned kind of the hard way, and now I'm preaching it. Use a system that is already in place. If you have a school calendar that everybody's using, like your admin, go ahead and use it too. It's just going to save you from reinventing the wheel or missing something important. Our school used Google Calendar, so that's what I'm going to use too. Why would I want to have another calendar if that one is already getting filled up? It's up to you, but you could sync your personal calendar also with Google Calendar. That's what I did because it just gave me a fighting chance of seeing it because it was only one calendar I had to reference. No more double booking or missing important dates because they weren't on your radar. If you're a visual learner and you wanted to get fancy, you could color code and customize your calendar to make it work for you. Maybe IEP meetings are red, personal tasks are blue, school-wide events are green. Or you could set up reminders a day or two before each event so you're always ahead of the game. I did do that and it did not work for me, but it might be a great solution for you. Let's quickly recap before we move on to classroom organization. We've been talking about finding a system that's going to work for you. No more beating yourself up for being disorganized. We just haven't found the right system. So maybe it's paper, maybe it's digital, maybe it's a little bit of both. I highly recommend using what's already available to you. If your school uses Google Calendar, why not go with Google Calendar? Why add another system that you have to keep up with? If you prefer to keep things separate, personal versus professional, that's totally understandable. I did prefer to keep it together, and instead you could use color coding to keep it separate within the same calendar. That worked for me because I didn't have a chance of double booking that way. This last area is all about setting up your classroom so that it can stay organized. Now, let me just give a quick personal anecdote to kind of frame what I'm thinking of for your classroom. I am not a big cook, but when I do cook, I prefer just to be by myself in the kitchen because what I do is I clean up as I cook. And if that is annoying to you, I am so sorry. But what I do is as something is like on the stove, then I will take whatever I use to mix that together and start putting it in the sink and have it maybe soak with water. Then as I move it from the stove to a plate, a platter, to the oven, whatever comes next, then I'll go back to the sink. It's been soaking for a while. I'll put it into the dishwasher. I have a system going so that by the time all the food is plated and ready to go, the kitchen's not a disaster, at least not too bad. Everything starts getting put away as I'm going. I always feel frustrated when we have those big, giant family meals, and then you spend like an hour and a half in an assembly line washing dishes. And I'm thinking to myself, if I was in charge of this, I wouldn't have any dishes. I'd just be enjoying my time with guests. But that's another story. All right, moving back into the classroom. I highly recommend bringing organization into your classroom using drop zones. What is a drop zone? It's a designated area where students are going to place their work, their materials, their belongings, or anything that applies to your students. This isn't going to just make your life easier. It's also about teaching students valuable organization skills, even if these are the youngest students, like kindergarten, first grade. Just think about it. They're already in a routine of putting things where they belong. Why not mesh that with a system that's going to work for your entire classroom? In a past episode, I had talked about using the ketchup, mustard, pickles. I don't know what episode that is. I'll try to find it. But basically, I had these cute little signs and bins that my students used. Ketchup was for ketchup work. So any work that was not completed went into that bin. Mustard was the must-do work. So when students were moving independently, they knew to go to that bin to find what they needed. And pickles was like, you can pick the activity, maybe early finishers. Honestly, we just didn't have early finishers too often. I felt like we were always running behind. But those systems were in place. And I chose an area of the classroom where it was inaccessible, but it wasn't like the papers were going to creep into the small group instruction area or the teacher desk or into something else. So you want to think about where you want to set that up and have students practice that routine of utilizing that system. So that's what I mean by drop zones. You could also do this where they're going to put their supplies. It's this whole idea is to reduce the chaos and help keep your classroom running smoothly. I have one more anecdote. Sorry for all the personal oversharing in this episode, but I think this is going to apply. So way back when my husband and I had been married maybe 3 or 4 years, we lived in Boston. We moved to Boston. We lived in the smallest apartment possible. It was a cubicle, and it was not a nice cubicle. When we lived there, household chores always felt impossible. And I would beat myself up thinking, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I keep things clean? Like, why can't I get on top of this? We would do laundry, we would do dishes, and it felt like a game of Tetris to put things away because there was just no space. It wasn't until years later when we moved on and, as life goes on, our homes got larger, I realized the problem wasn't that I was so disorganized. It was that nothing had a place. The cubicle was so small, there was no place to put the dishes. I would be stacking up folded laundry and those stacks would tip over and become a mess again. It wasn't me, it was the environment. So that's what I mean by setting up drop zones in your classroom. A drop zone could be as simple as putting a bin by the door where students drop off things that they come in the room with. Or you could set up a shelf that has labeled bins for different content areas or activities. The key here is setting up some consistency and teaching your students that routine. You could add visual cues like labels or posters to remind students where things go. Don't be afraid to get creative. You can use colors, symbols, even pictures to make that system clear and engaging. The more involved your students are, the more likely they're going to stick with it. Okay, so let's recap what we've talked about today. Number 1, embrace your unique style. Finding those organizational tools and systems that work for you. Do not beat yourself up if you see this awesome system and you go all in and it's an utter failure. It just might not be the right system for you. Next, we want to stay up on top of that paperwork by setting up very simple systems for tracking due dates, especially those meetings. So make the most of your school's calendar by syncing and customizing it to meet your needs. And finally, you're bringing organization into the classroom by creating these drop zones that involve your students in the process. And remember, there's no right way or wrong way to get organized. What matters is that system's going to work for you and help you feel calm and in control. Trust yourself, embrace your unique style, and don't be afraid to make adjustments along the way. You're doing amazing work, and you deserve systems that support you in every way possible. Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to hear what systems do work for you. Drop a comment on this podcast or stop by the Special Educators Resource Room Facebook group. I'll put a link in the show notes. Can't wait to hear how it's going this school year, and I'll catch you next time in the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com.
See you next week for more special education solutions.